Hey team, don't want to take a lot of your time today, but I have just really felt pressed upon by the Holy Spirit this morning to share a couple of leadership principles that I came across in rereading the story of Joseph in Genesis chapter 39. I do want to start out by saying that I am so blessed to be surrounded by an incredible team of leaders. Many of you are better leaders than I am, and you serve so faithfully in your workplaces, in the organizations that you're a part of. You are amazing leaders here at the church, and I am learning from you just as much as you have the potential to learn from me. But I do want to pay that back a little bit by sharing with you some things that I believe the Lord is speaking to my heart, not only for myself, but for our church. In Genesis chapter 39, it starts out by saying that Joseph had been brought down to Egypt. Now, the significance of that wording to me is that this was in no way Joseph's choice. I think if Joseph would have had it his way, he would have remained the favored son in his father's house. I cannot tell you how many times I have allowed comfort and a feeling of favored status to keep me in a place instead of taking a risk to move into a place of greater responsibility and greater leadership opportunity, because I did not want to go from being a good-sized fish in a small pond to maybe being a small fish in a large pond and having to work my way up. And so I stayed put where I was. And I think that we have to be careful not to keep ourselves stationary, but we need to allow God to take us wherever He wants to take us. And I think more often than not, we should say yes to opportunities that are going to allow our influence and our leadership to be expanded. The next thing that I saw in this chapter, it says that the Lord was with Joseph and he became successful. You know, I believe that is what God desires to do in our lives. And number one, God does love us and he likes to bless us with abundance, but our success glorifies Him. And if we handle success correctly, then we are constantly turning that success around and giving credit back to Him. And we should actively be doing that in everything that we're doing. And we don't have to be weird about it. We don't have to come across as super spiritual. But it should become a regular practice of ours that when people recognize the effort and the quality that we're giving to something, that we should turn around and give credit back to Jesus. Now, the thing that stood out to me the most is that it said that his master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord had caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. When we give our best, when we work with excellence, and we allow the Holy Spirit to move in us, and guys, a lot of this has to do with our attitudes, right? I mean, if we come to a project with a bad attitude, I don't think Joseph wanted to be serving as a slave. I don't think Joseph wanted to be in Potiphar's house. I don't think any of this were on his plans or his goals, right? This didn't make it onto his vision board for his life. But yet, Joseph allowed himself to be placed into a position by God, even though in the moment he didn't understand how it could become favorable. And by working hard and serving Jesus, serving God, his master saw in him qualities and capabilities that led him to being put over everything in Potiphar's house. It says, so Joseph found favor in his sight, and he attended him, and he made him overseer of his house and put him in charge. From that time on, he made him overseer in his house, and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in the house and in the field. It says, so he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and because of him, he had no concern about anything but the food that he ate. Think about this. When Joseph was the favored son of Abraham living in Israel, Well, he had it pretty good, right? He had his coat of many colors. He didn't necessarily have to work the field. He got to kind of be an overseer over his brothers. And even while Abraham was very wealthy, his power and influence didn't come close to being what Potiphar's power and influence were in Egypt. At this time, Egypt was the most powerful nation in the entire world. And he was the captain of Pharaoh's guard, which means that he was in close proximity to Pharaoh, to the ruler of basically of the world at that point. And Joseph was now his primary assistant. So his power and influence, his ability to exert leadership and be able to do something of value and prominence, man, it had just been elevated. It had been escalated dramatically because of the positioning that God had placed in his life and because he responded with a positive attitude. But the thing that's so amazing to me is that Joseph served with such integrity and with such excellence. He was so intentional about the work that he was doing that Potiphar did not have to worry about anything going on in his house, and his house was blessed. So let me ask you this. Are you actively praying for the place that you work? Are you praying for that bank? Are you praying for John Deere? Are you praying for the Arsenal? Are you praying for that company? Are you praying for Duckies? Are you praying for your construction outfit or for Eaton? And I know that I'm talking about specific individuals here on our leadership team, but are we praying that the places that we are working for would be blessed? And are we working so well for the Lord that the people that oversee us don't have to worry about anything that they give us to do? And then the second question I would ask is, are we doing that in the church? Are we serving with such diligence, taking on responsibility with so much ownership and caring so much about the quality and the excellence with which we are serving Jesus, that the people who are overseeing us never have to give a second question or second thought to the different assignments or tasks that we're being given? Because that is the sign of a true servant leader. If you want to be positioned by God, lead in such a way, serve in such a way that the people who oversee you don't have to worry about anything that you're doing because you're doing it so well. In doing that, you will be a blessing. And by being a blessing, the Lord will elevate you. And think about what he did in Joseph's life. He continued to elevate him. He continued to position him. And in many times, this positioning involved being put into situations and places that Joseph would not necessarily, I don't think at all, would have desired. He went from being over Potiphar's house to being in the prison. But what prison? It was the prison for Pharaoh's officials. So this wasn't just maximum security. No, this was the elite prison for the people with the most networks and contacts and influence in the kingdom. God put Joseph there so that one day he could be brought before Pharaoh. And when he was brought before Pharaoh, he had the same work ethic and the same attitude that he had at Potiphar's house. And he became the second over all of Egypt, the most powerful nation in the world. So we have no idea where our faithfulness and our serving can take us. But if we do it with the right attitude and we do it with all of our heart, serving Jesus, letting that be our motivation, Jesus will take us places. And yes, I believe he will remove us from the places that we don't want to be, and he'll put us in the places that he wants us to be, that allow us to find the most fulfillment, satisfaction, and blessing as well. Guys, have an incredible weekend. Have a great rest of your day today. Let's keep serving Jesus. I love you guys.